Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video. My name is Sebastian, and you may know me from the German podcast Zeltgespräche. And if you're listening to our podcast, you already know how much we love hiking through truly wild spaces. And for me personally, how much I love seeing animals in the wild. And that's exactly why I'm very excited about today's interview, because I have a very special guest here today. Today I'm speaking with Bart Schutz from the foundation Rewilding Europe. And Rewilding Europe is an organization or foundation that is working to make Europe wilder again. And so you guys are working on bringing back natural ecosystems to Europe, as far as I understood. But I think you can probably explain that much better. So I'll hand the mic over to you and you can introduce yourself and the foundation NGO that you're working for.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. My name is Bart. I work for Rewilding Europe. Rewilding means that we are restoring nature at scale. We are making it truly wild again, and so wild that nature can actually take the lead again itself. That it can natural processes can architecture landscapes can build sustainable systems of wildlife and nature. And I think that's in that sense we are a different organization than most nature conservation organizations, right? So rewilding is really about restoring what is broken. It's different in every landscape, but then making sure that we humans can, take a step back and let nature take the lead again. And it's amazing to work with that, because if you let nature take the lead, it bounces back so quickly. Wildlife comes back so quickly. And I love the fact that you love encountering wildlife, because that's what we encounter like on a daily basis. Yeah. If a certain type of wildlife is actually missing. So, for example, there are large grazers missing and everything becomes a forest. We reintroduce them, right? So we brought back the bison, the European bison, in a lot of landscapes in Europe, often together with other NGOs like WWF. But also sometimes the predators are missing, like in Italy, where there are actually too many grazers. So everything becomes grass in the Apennines, and we're actually helping to bring back more wolves and more bears, right? So it's depending on it, but definitely a lot of wildlife encounters. And if you love being out there and experience nature in a wilder form, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So is the goal basically to sort of bring back the ecosystem to like pre-industrial levels, to like 200 years ago, where sort of there's no human interference necessary, where the biodiversity is so dense that they can are very resilient and they can combat climate change and everything by themselves? So sort of what is the end goal of these projects?
Well, exactly that, right? Nature doesn't need us.
Yeah.
We need nature. I mean, the other way around, that's another, but if there's no human interference, then nature will evolve and we'll have a super biodiverse, there will be a lot of carbon stored, etc. Right? So all these processes that we need to combat all the biodiversity loss, to combat climate change, this is one of the ways to make it very impactful. Of course, there are other ways like minimizing human impact, the reducing carbon footprints, etc. But making sure nature is strong and have its own systems built, that's what we are trying to do in Europe.
And then
there are more organizations like globally, right? And I mean, there are also rewilding NGOs in South Americas and the Americas. And one of the reasons why rewilding nowadays gets so much attention and is embraced more and more and really is a movement is that, first of all, economically, it's way more effective than most nature conservation approaches, other ones, because all the other ones, they need a lot of human effort, money. And if we want to have like 30 to 50% of Europe being natural areas again, or it's unaffordable the way we do it right now. So, making sure that you restore the processes so nature can take the lead again and you can stop interfering is also financially a very effective way. And scientifically, it's also proven that it's the most effective one. Right? Basically, nature can take care of itself the best.
Yeah, as it did like many years before humans came around, as it did.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe that was the only mistake of nature, to produce us. Right?
Yeah, deep topic. And so you mentioned in your sentence that you have projects where you introduced like the European bison or the wolf. Yeah, can you sort of name a couple of projects that Rewilding Europe is working on currently, and also maybe one of your favorite projects, and why is it your favorite project? Then sort of how do you select these projects? Do you look at like industrial landscapes that look horrible and then you try and rewild them, or like how do you select the areas that you're going to be working on?
So we as Rewilding Europe, we cannot rewild Europe on our own, all of it, right? So
Yeah.
what we do as an approach is that we have these we have these landscapes that are examples for similar landscapes. So we on purpose have been choosing very different type of landscapes. So some like old industrial ones we have, but we have deltas, we have mountains, we have shores, we have forests. So we have all these different types of landscapes where we are learning what it takes to restore it in a way that nature can take the lead again itself. So, and whether it's restoring a forest or restoring a river, we're learning from it, and we're using these learnings to share with other protected areas, NGOs, entrepreneurs, local communities, to show that this is what we learned, so that they can also use that knowledge and start scaling it up. If you look at how our foundation is organized, is there are basically two teams. One of the teams is the Wild and Nature team, biologists, ecologists. They are amazing in seeing what the landscape needs in order to let nature take the lead again, and they're restoring it. But there's also the team that I'm working in, which is we call it the Nature for People team. It's the team that makes sure that the people in the landscape that coexist with this returning nature are actually benefiting from it, are become proud again on their knowledge that they still have about coexisting with wild and nature. So these are the two teams, but we're supported by two other teams. One team is more the building engagement, building the movement, right? Showing it to others, making sure that they can join us. And with the last team is the upscaling team, which is all about sharing this knowledge with others, like to embrace this, so that in that way we are trying to have more impact than we would have if we would only do it ourselves with this small team. We're not that small, but we're trying to have the biggest impact in that way by just making everybody's joining, learning, and then apply it also outside all other landscapes. My personal favorites. So I'm quite an outdoor enthusiast.
Wonderful.
Alpine climbing. I was partly raised in Switzerland. So I have a sort of favor for the mountain landscapes that we have. One of them is the Southern Carpathians in Romania.
Oh yeah.
It's a massively big area, and that makes it ideal for rewilding because it needs a big scale, right? If you want every part of the natural ecosystems and the trophic chains, etc., to work together, you need the predators, you need the grazers, right? You need the mosaic landscape, and that Carpathians are amazing. And most of it is still untouched. There's quite a bit of human traces in the valleys. So typically there are factories, but most of them are abandoned. There are a lot of houses. Most of them are abandoned because people cannot make a living anymore in those areas. They move to the cities or to other parts of Europe in the Romanian case. So that's quite abandoned, and that has makes the landscape very special, because what we're doing is nature can take the lead quite easily, right? We're reintroducing a lot of grazers, so a lot of deers and the bison, which was extinct in Europe. It's now reintroduced in a lot of landscapes again. Especially there, the population, I think we introduced, I don't know exactly, but I think like 40 or 80 of them, but they're now like 200 of them. So also they start growing.
Amazing.
Very, very, very successful. In this case, it was also done together with Rewilding Romania and WWF. And being out there, you see that the local people start realizing the benefits of restoring nature and having nature come back. Because although there are conflicts, right? A bison loves anything you grow in your vegetable garden.
Yeah.
And it's a 1,000 kilo animal. You need not a small fence to stop it, right?
Yeah.
But the area they're branding it even as Zimbria, Zimbro, Zimbrus. It's the like the Romanian word for bison or wisent, and they're now so proud of it that they're calling the landscape Zimbria, and they see that they want to experience this nature bouncing back. They want to encounter these bisons in the wild, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like encountering a bison in Africa, right? It's a massive animal. If you're on foot, it's seriously impactful. And I mean, we can never guarantee because it's wildlife that you actually see them. But if you have a good guide that's well trained and also very knows how to not have a negative impact, but have a positive impact on the animals, then yeah, you can actually see them, and I love that. And then in this mountainous area where you can also do my sports like mountain biking, climbing. I do tour skiing in winter. It's quite hard because there are not a lot of cabins, so you really have to find your way. But yeah, it's an amazing landscape. It's probably like the biggest safari destination or wildlife destination in Europe because it's so big.
Yeah, it's definitely on my bucket list as well.
Yeah,
Isn't bison also your favorite animal, would you say? So
no, lynx.
Lynx, okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then especially the Iberian one. Because it's very threatened, right? It's so on my bucket list in terms of seeing wildlife, it's the lynx. Yeah, the Iberian lynx. But chances are so small. Nocturnal animals, solitary. It's a master in not being noticed. Yeah. So, and also I think like people always are. I think this is a bit like the African dominance on nature-based tourism. That nature-based is very often like wildlife tourism, and then it's about encountering wildlife. What we get back from the people traveling to our landscapes is that they're mostly impressed by the power of nature to bounce back. Not so much like to actually encounter a bison, but to see the impact of the bison in being like an architecture of the landscape. The Carpathians are forest, single species forest. It's because it's not grazed. So we need bigger grazers. We need them to step on the soil and have different types of plants live there, create open spaces, so it becomes this mosaic, like this. Indeed,
yeah,
like
they're terraforming, basically. They're changing the landscape.
Exactly, and that's super impressive to see.
Yeah.
And the impact and how quickly that happens, because we've only been there like for 10 years, but you can see pictures before, after. You hear people telling like the stories, like how it used to be and how now nature is so impressively beautiful. I think that's what people remember the most if they go to our landscapes, the impact of all this diversity that comes back within no time if you just restore what's broken and then let nature take the lead again. And of course, it's super nice to actually see an animal. I think the most elusive animal in Europe to encounter is absolutely a lynx, but also the Mexican brown bear.
Yeah.
You mentioned that one when we had our initial chat. So again, it's a mountainous area, the Apennines. So I love it. But there we are saving there's only a dozen of them we're still alive, Mexican brown bears. It's a subspecies from the normal European, the Eurasian brown bear. It's slightly different in color. When they approach wintertime, they have to double in weight because they have to hibernate.
Double. Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, especially if it's a pregnant female and she has a few cups in her belly. She needs a lot of fat to get through the winter. It's pretty warm for a mountainous area, so if they do a hibernation, it's only a few weeks. But the other time, they're sort of lazing around, very, very inactive. So they need that food. And in autumn, all the fruits are ripening. but there are a lot of people in the area that live from orchards, growing apples to create cider, for example. And if a bear is trying to prepare for winter and there's a tree full of apples, it's super handy in climbing the tree, and they're very good climbers, and they will eat like your whole all the apples you were growing. So these people typically shoot the bears because they are the enemies of their harvest. Nowadays,
so they don't kill any livestock; they eat the harvest. In
a
Italy.
bear,
yeah,
a bear. First of all, it usually doesn't kill livestock itself. It's more like a scavenger, right? It leaves that to the wolves. And if the wolf kills, let's say, a sheep, and the bear notices it or smells it, he will approach it, and then he's the bigger one. Scares away the wolf, so the wolves are very quickly trying to get as much, and then they have to leave it to the bear. So if you see a bear actually feeding on a prey, that's usually not caught by himself.
Okay, usually scavenger, usually the carcass.
Yeah. Well, if like in lots, like massive amounts, lots of parts in Europe, we are no longer used to coexist. So if you have a barn full of sheep and the bear enters, and the sheep can go nowhere, then it will feed on them, right? But it's very easy catching them. It's not such a. I mean, look at its size. It's lumpy. It's like the hard running cats that goes for hunting. But then it will feed. Oh, by the way, most of the sheep will probably die because they are panicking, stepping on each other, and
getting a heart attack.
Getting a heart attack, yeah. So you have to make sure these wild animals, these predators, cannot get to your livestock.
Yeah.
And one of the ways we are super active in helping the local communities, where we are bringing back animals like this with, for example, electric fencing. And usually we are supplying them, right? So we're really helping them. It's not like, hey, you should do this. No, we're there with the fence, and we'll set it up together.
Yeah.
And we also will explain you how to maintain it, because an electric fence, if you don't, like, for example, mow the grass, it will touch it. It will go short circuit. It doesn't function anymore. So you have to maintain it. But that like these ways also we can, for example, if you have sheep, we can help you to get the right type of dog that will scare away the predator, because they are super effective there. But most of the landscape where we were, people actually still have this knowledge.
Yeah.
That's also so super cool. If we bring people to the landscapes and they talk to these people start realizing that, in these city lives that we have, we lost that knowledge. And it's super inspiring to hear those stories, like how, and that those people are still, very, very, very good in coexisting. And they also talk different about wildlife. But we have such a, like, lots of us have such a huge distance, because we're not living those landscapes. We're not encountering those animals anymore, that we have this fear pictures of the wolf from fairy tales, that it's always a bad animal and it kills, and it's dangerous for us. But
and as you said, like nature, we need nature basically more than nature needs us. And we also talked about this in our podcast, that we have sort of this disconnection, because you say, on the weekend, I'm going into nature. So that means you leave your city to go into nature, but nature is everywhere, in fact. You're sort of going into it.
Part of nature.
Yeah.
It's also, we always talk about like humans and nature as if they are something separate from a different dimension or so. No, we are completely part of it and dependent on it.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on one thing that you said earlier, that people come to look at the landscapes, which is amazing, because I've seen some sort of like ecotourism where they focus on just seeing the animal, and that can sometimes be a bit harmful. If you look at like whale sharks in the Philippines, they sort of lure them in with food, and then like there's like 100 people snorkeling around the whale shark, which is then not so sustainable anymore. So I like the fact that people also do look at the landscape. And if they see an animal, great, but it's not the main goal to like see the animal. So that's pretty good. And I saw that you were also now on the international stage, basically, right? Because you were sort of charged as one of 9 companies by the UN Decade Program to rewild like 30 billion hectares by 2030. This is 4 years, so loads of stuff to do. But that means you're also sort of on the international stage, which is really amazing. And I think the sort of the project that you talked about in Italy with marsh and brown bear, that is, I think, a big success story from you guys, because I always try and compare it with like the wolf in Germany, where I've seen these fences, these electric fences, but they're not well established yet. So we still have some problem with the wildlife, because I think we lost all the knowledge that you talked about. But I think in Italy, this specific marsh and brown bear project, that is a huge success story where people really coexist now, so that sounds pretty amazing.
I think what we did good, what we learned in Italy, is that we created bear smart communities, as we call them. And it's, for example, fencing is one, but another thing is, for example, bin for garbage bins, right? In Germany, same as in the Netherlands, our bins, you can super easily open them, which for an animal is very often attractive, but also associates in his brain or her brain, people, humans, with food. And that's when things start going bad, and you get problematic animals, like problematic wolves. And they are dangerous, right? If they really associate, but if they don't, I remember the Mexican brown bear. I visited a apple grower farmer in the Apennines, and he showed us this video. It was a video of his son, who's still living on the farm. The son got a child, and the child is a baby, and it's in one of these small chairs in the kitchen, and they have like this baby phone so they can hear it, but also with a camera that they can see the baby, right?
Yeah.
The baby is just there, sleeping, but suddenly a Mexican brown bear, a female, enters the kitchen. They left the door open.
Wow.
So what do you think that happens? There's a child which is like just up for taking. The bear doesn't even smell on the bed, just passes by, stands on her hind legs, front legs on the kitchen, and there was fruit.
Yeah.
There was a bit, and so fruit is gone. One apple falls down. She gets down. She eats the apple. She leaves. 15 minutes later, she returns again, passes by the baby. Then she sniffs, like just the baby. I don't know. I think people maybe they stink or so, because she is not interested. She just walks to the same spot, looks if there's any fruit left, and she leaves again. I mean, also for those farmers, super scary. But these images of the animals being super dangerous, no, you need to know how to deal with them. In these bear smart communities, we do take care with all the knowledge on how to coexist. They know a tremendous amount themselves still, because the bear was always been there. But we're also setting up signposts for tourists, like if you encounter, what should you do, how close, then what, then, because it differs on how close the encounter is, etc. But they're not so dangerous in Europe. They're as scared of you as you are of them.
Yeah, that I mean, the bear smart communities is a very crucial point. And in our podcast, we talked about the number of bear attacks that happened in Japan recently. And I think that's exactly what they're missing, because I'm assuming that they are not the bear smart communities yet. And they would benefit from these kind of knowledge to sort of reduce the bear attacks, because I think they have the same issues that the bins are not sealed, and they're not used to coexist with these animals,
Yeah, so what we have, for example, in the Carpathians, because that's the area where we have the most bears. Really thousands of them in the Carpathians. The tourism, people love seeing those bears. So tourism starts creating products for it. If you now look at some of the bigger platforms on wildlife tracking in the Carpathians, we at Rewilding Europe, we get very nervous, because that's the type of tourism that's super dangerous.
Yeah.
Maybe the same as in Japan, I don't know. But you see all these pictures of people getting really close, taking selfies, putting it in TikTok. Other people want to have the same experience. We have examples of where people on motorbikes just start feeding the bears. There's this super famous Transfagarasan highway. Windy road up the mountains, super beautiful, but super intense beer area also. They're feeding the bears. They're just grabbing them like they're taking a picture. those bears are going to be super problematic, right? We have to shoot them. We are too much associated with food. Also, even with some of the heights where people are hoping to see bears, also some of them are feeding the bears. Also very dangerous. There are examples where I've been in one where there were like 16 bears, all females, all very aggressive towards each other, because they knew that around 4 o'clock there would be a watermelon, right? And they just fighting over it. That's horrible, right? That's not sustainable. That's gonna create a lot of problems, with a lot of conflicts with human wildlife. So one of the reasons we are so involved in tourism as an NGO in nature restoration is to make sure that tourism becomes a force for good, and that we can picture and steer it towards what people actually want, because really 80% of us indicates, I don't want to have a negative impact. I want to leave nature better than I found it. I know in your podcast you've also been talking about leave no traces, right? And if you find like plastic bottles from others, take them, because it's dangerous for animals. So that's one of the other reason, of course, is to make sure that the local people benefit from tourism and become proud again, financially benefit, so that we can all enjoy wilder nature again, and see the power of nature and see it bounce back, and lead us the way into a healthier future that is not threatened by climate change and biodiversity.
Exactly. And I would love to see, especially Germany, my home country, to have like bears, wolves, moose. We have lots of beavers again, which I love. They're also a little bit problematic to some farmers because they change the landscape in a drastic way, but I do love them return. There's also some like eagles back in Germany, which is really really great. And I think what you mentioned earlier, the when people feed wild animals, that's always bad. There's another podcast from Canada or America called Tooth and Claw, and they analyze animal attacks, and I think 99.9% is all like a human error involved, where they attracted the bear with food or the animal with food, or had some bad behaviors. So I think all these bad events could probably be prevented by the accurate behavior. No? So I think there's lots of things to learn from that. And another question that I had was from your projects, like it's more like a business perspective, because I'm just working a normal job. Is like, how do you measure the impact? Do you have like key performance indicators, objectives, like a checklist? Okay, once we have reached X, Y, Z, the project is finished, or your project sort of never really finished. You always continue to work on them, or is there like a state where you say, okay, now nature is in a state where we leave it now and it can sustain itself?
Yeah, well, on the nature side itself, I'm not involved. I'm in the other team, right? I'm in the business nature for people team. But yeah, we definitely do have. We actually have a rewilding score that has several indicators, and then one overall number to like easily, roughly compare landscapes, and like the basic of that score is like how much human involvement is still in the landscape. So how much control is there? So if let's say we're in a delta and the height of the level of water is still maintained by humans, it's like that's negative. But if it's natural flooding again, and you see like swamps, etc., starting to exist again, water buffaloes starting to grow in numbers, those are all very good indicators. On the nature for people side, we also have a lot of indicators, a lot of economic ones, simple things like jobs created, the size of the economy. We split it into different, like, is it local products or is it tourism? But we also have some what we call wider benefits. Those are KPIs that are not like directly impacting, but more like on a creating the movement scale, like how positive are people about the projects that we're doing. Are they talking about it to friends? Are they onboarding others in the environment to visit these areas or support us? And all of our landscapes are measuring all of these KPIs, and it's for us the biggest learning. So we're super data driven, right?
Yeah.
We've only been there for 15 years, so it's still a very much ongoing project. There's no landscape where we're done, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we're finished.
Yeah.
No. But I mean, there are some natural areas in Europe. I'm currently in Switzerland. There's the Swiss National Park, which
Mhm.
is one of the highest ranking on this rewilding score. It's not one of our own landscape, but it's a super nice example where actually there's minimal interference of humans in the park. The only control that they do have is on humans entering the park.
Yeah.
It's very well taken care of, so that's positively contributing to the landscape and not extracting too much. I think the discussion on KPIs is always very interesting because very often I need that discussion because people will say like, hey, but yeah, it's negative for this. So
Yeah.
hey, your bird has a CO2 impact because he traveled there by car or maybe even by airplane, right?
Mm.
So how can you say it's positive? It's not. But
Yeah.
make it positive or not, it's not that simple.
Yeah.
We all have all kinds of impact on the people, on nature in all different ways. One of them is maybe a carbon footprint, but there are also other ways, right? And it's about balancing out all these impacts that we have as humans that in the end, you can level it like, okay, we call this positive or we call this negative.
Mm.
Whereas you mentioned the wilderplaces.com initiative, right?
Yeah.
So we create this platform to have an easier system for people to find destinations, activities, multi-day tours, daytime activities, even accommodations that have a positive impact on nature. How do we measure this positive impact, right? So I have to vet. We have a very strict vetting procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Providers where we're measuring all these KPIs. There's always discussion, okay, if one KPI is actually negative, right? Does it compensate for the others?
Yeah.
But this is what we mean with learning, because having these discussions will actually more and more clarify the impact that we have, either as a tourist or as a provider, on nature and its natural ecosystems. We are also learning it's different for different landscapes because and then you can never say it's all positive, but in the end, nature is better off if this person went there than when he didn't. But it can even be like the wider benefit score, right? So if one of the people listening would visit one of our rewilding landscapes, and he becomes like, I have examples of a French girl that recently contacted us. I went to the Central Apennines where, right, I didn't see the Mexican brown bear, but I heard about its comeback. I think she did see a wolf. There was more the wolves. It was mere winter season. It's easy to spot wolves. It's hardly impossible to see bears. But anyhow, she said, I'm going to change my career. I studied sociology, but I'm going to be a rewilder. Hey, how big is that impact?
Bam.
Right?
Yeah.
And she even traveled by train. Okay, still some CO2 impact, but so it's always more complex. But I'm also I used to be I'm actually a psychologist by origin, right? Both my parents are even psychologists, so I was really raised in how do humans behave and what makes our decisions, etc. I think it's very interesting to see that people so overestimate our understanding of complex processes.
Mm.
We have this little voice in our head that loves to comfort ourselves like, yeah, I get it. It's ABC. It's usually not, especially if we talk about ecosystems in nature. It's super complex. There are so many things happening, but the same is with tourism. There's so many KPIs to measure, and they're all, in balance with each other, or out of balance, but at least influencing each other. I think that's super interesting to work with, but also to make people realize, right, that, and if you let nature take the lead again, which is very simple, then see everything restoring itself, biodiversity increasing, mosaic landscapes, species returning. I think that's the complexity of nature. Nature is best in managing that. Humans are not so good at it.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think there's also this example of like how beaver dams, how they can sort of diminish or even stop wildfires because they create these wetlands so the wildfires stop. Or there's also this example a couple of 100 years ago, I think in Norway, it's like a little anecdote where I think there were fishermen who wanted to have more fish. And so they said, oh, the seals are eating our fish. So they killed all the seals, so they deleted one maybe keystone species. But then there were orca who were usually feeding on the seals, and now they fed on the sea otters. And the orcas completely depleted the sea otter population. And so the sea otters were gone. The sea otters were usually eating the sea urchin, and the sea urchin would usually eat the kelp. So there's no one to keep in check the sea urchin, so the kelp was gone. And the kelp is actually the breeding ground for the fish.
Place for those fish, absolutely.
So in the end, they had 0 fish, just to illustrate in this basic example the complexity of these systems sometimes, where we think we know what we're doing, but we actually don't. And I mean, you brushed over the Wilder Places, but it's called Wilder Places. It's an initiative that you recently, maybe like a year ago, launched, and that allows people to visit the places you're working on, to like experience firsthand one of these projects. And I think that's a pretty amazing thing, the Wilder Places. I think it's initiative. I'll definitely put it down in the notes on the video.
Yeah, and I mean, you can just go there and see it, but you can also really experience. You can even go there and help contribute. We have Rewilding Weeks where people are actually, in the landscape helping to do also our work a few days. Which could be either helping us with the camera traps where we're monitoring, or removing barbed wire if it's, for example, in the Carpathians or in the Apennines, because there's still thousands of kilometers of old barbed wire. Creating bridges for the roads or whatever is needed in the area. Removal of dams, you mentioned the Scandic, so there's a lot of dam removal projects that we're doing so that the fish can swim up the river again, and they needed to restore the natural processes up in the arteries of the rivers. So we have a lot of rewilding weeks, more and more appearing, and I'm super happy with the amount of, because it's again, people's mind are super cool. I'm super hopeful for the future, because people actually want nature to be healthy and they want to be positive in their impact. It's just that these tourism systems are not made up for it. But so I was at ITB, which is like the biggest global tourism burgs in Berlin, and there was all of the talks, like all of the bigger platforms and tour operators were talking about this. People are moving towards nature, and like the Airbnb's strategy currently is called bet on nature, because they see that people are no longer they're still booking in the cities, but more and more remote off-grid cabins in the middle of nature, super popular. There's just no supply. Everybody's looking for these offerings because it's missing, right? I was a bit skeptical when I joined the Rewilding Europe just over a year ago can we actually do we have this on offer? Like we are even very remote. Infrastructure is always very difficult to get to these landscapes. But it turned out that in terms of providers, these people are amazing in creating really, really nice experiences. We have like over 160 or so experience now on the platform within 9 months. This is going super fast. There's actually a massive supply. These people actually, they live these landscapes. They've always been coexisting with nature. Now that nature is really returning, it's for them. They just have their accommodation. They start guiding services, or start renting out bikes or whatever. It's really economic initiatives are really popping up everywhere. And I think the Rewilding Week is one of the best examples where multiple tour operators, our providers are brought together by our colleagues in the landscapes. Say, hey, make this experience like a true rewilding tourism experience. So we call it rewilding tourism, right? Because I think that the thing that's like nature-based tourism, still big, growing type of tourism, ecotourism within it's also still growing, but it's all about either using nature as a tourist, but that doesn't mean it's positive, right? Or ecotourism about minimizing impact. It's not enough, folks. Minimizing impact, still negative impact. And yes, it's good to have an accommodation that does its water management sustainable, and its waste management, etc. But in order for nature to come back, we need not only a sustainable accommodation, we actually need to restore those processes that were broken. So we need animals to turn back, keystone species to start shaping the landscape again. That's what rewilding tourism is about, really experiencing that power of nature if you fix what's broken so that it can bounce back again. And the amount of providers in landscapes it's not a problem. So I would absolutely invite everyone to check out a landscape that they like. So in my case, mountain areas, but we also have a lot of river deltas that you could, if people like, especially for bird watchers, people like the birds, or butterflies or flowers. There's something for everybody when you're a nature lover. And if you want to combine it with outdoor activities like I do, it's also super easy. I mean, most of the activities are not so extractive, but we also even have like 4x4 experiences in some of the landscapes. So you almost have like an African feel to it.
Yeah, sounds pretty amazing. I think that the demand is definitely there. I mean, I'm in Munich right now. I'm based in Munich, and when there's good weather, people are like in all the parks, and they're all on the mountains. So the people love that. And I sometimes feel that the supply is not 100% just there yet. For example, we like the hiking, the trekking in our podcast, and then in Germany, it's not really allowed to do wild camping a lot. So there are some sort of states in Germany that build these trekking places where you can legally wild camp, and some you have to reserve. And the one that you can reserve is just a handful, and they are gone like festival tickets. You have to like lock in midnight and book them in. It's such a big demand, so the supply, the amount of spaces still has to grow, but we love it. There's only sort of one worry.
I think we have about like 20 hiking options now, and it's growing super fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I read about the experience in northern Sweden. I think you have an expedition to Sarek National Park or somewhere sort of Arctic northern Sweden. And there's also an equipment list for when you have to go. And we talk about equipment all the time in the podcast. So if anyone needs any advice on light equipment, ultralight equipment for these expeditions, you can listen to the podcast or watch some other YouTube videos because it's going to be a little bit lighter on that one. And I wanted to mention one thing. I wanted to hear your opinion on that one because I'm all for sort of experiencing nature and having nature-based tourism. But I've seen recently like more and more people, especially on Instagram, like big influencers going to the Arctic. And that's the thing that I'm a little bit worried about, because the Arctic for me is sort of the last frontier, the last ecosystem that's sort of untouched. And slowly there's going to be fishing vessels there and much more tourism. So I'm a little bit worried that like it's going to be an over-tourism there and that the ocean is going to be so loud. So is that something you're also worried about, that it could be like over-tourism nature, or is that...
One of the things that makes my job so amazingly interesting is that we're dealing with landscapes where there's no tourists. It's so remote, right? We actually have to start building it as a tourism destination, making people realize all these animals that you can witness there and how you can see nature bounce back. But we also have a lot of landscapes where it's over-tourism is a massive issue, right? So you mentioned Scandinavia a few times. So we're also active in the Nordic taiga, we call it, in Sweden, all the way up to the Norwegian border. But the impact on the indigenous tribe there, the Sami, is too big, too many tourists. We really have to start for a start decreasing the amount, and then secondly change the type of tourism to make it tourism that respects and actually is going to contribute to these people still coexisting with all the reindeer, etc. But so there's definitely, and on your remark on the people traveling to the Arctics, I think for me as a psychologist, it's so interesting and in the end hopeful that the people that love nature the most are probably also the most likely to take an airplane to see the king penguins on Antarctica. Like to see the last of this nature. And scientific evidence shows that the heartbeat of these penguins are increasing. I don't know how to, like tremendously increasing when tourists are approaching them, because they're used to stand there all winter, right? Just do nothing, have a very slow heartbeat. So it's actually very bad for them, right? And it's of course it's super cool. I wouldn't mind being there, right? I would also take a picture.
I couldn't exclude myself.
On Insta.
Love traveling.
Exactly. But they don't make you realize the positive and negative impacts you're having. So even though we need people to reconnect to nature, and that does require people to be in nature, right? The impact of being in nature is so tremendous, and people will then start acting also personally like, okay, I'm going to be more pro and less extractive for nature. But this is an example that's so extractive and so negatively impacting that, yeah, even if you become a huge donor of a project over there, it's not going to compensate, right? Yeah, but so if you ask those people, I'm sure they don't want to be negatively impacting nature, right? They probably love nature more than average. And I think that's where I get my hope from. It's not, we don't have to change people's minds or opinions or love for nature. We only have to change this commercial system that has been evolved around travel and tourism, that it's super extractive for nature, that utilizes nature in a negative way without even compensating for it.
Yeah.
So if we start changing the system, and that's what we're trying to do with Rewilding Europe, we're trying to move tourism in towards a rewilding tourism, like nature restorative type of tourism, showing those examples, sharing what we're learning on how to build this, both as on the supply side, where we're building rewilding destinations, where everybody from mayors to natural park managers to the providers, people, as well as our own NGOs, are collaborating on creating a ecosystem there that is nature positive, and it involves everyone, right? So even if you are considering to travel somewhere, please realize every step you're taking, even from the search you're doing, right? If you do it on a platform that is either sustainable or preferably even nature positive restorative, that is already an impact. If you're looking at the offerings, please filter out all those that are not stating anything on their nature impact, because again, you want it to be nature positive. So make sure you filter those options for yourself, and that's pretty hard, right? That's why we started the platform wilderplaces.com. So easier because all of them are vetted to be nature positive. But if you are choosing that, remember your own values. Do I love nature? Okay, then which ones am I going to choose? And hopefully, like from all the people individually behaving more and more nature positive on the one hand, and on the other hand, some initiatives that are really trying to change the system, then together, if we can meet to the desire that we all have, which is to be nature, it must be possible. Huh?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the traveler's value chain that we talked about before the interview, right? Yeah. So that's like you look at your trip from really A to Z from the beginning to the end. Like, I cannot exclude myself from the travels. I went all the way to the Pantanal in Brazil to see jaguars, but I think so. I can claim that hopefully that I did my due diligence and really did some thorough research to sort of understand what company I'm going with and who sort of has like a positive impact on the community and the jaguars. And I hope I did. I hope my research was good enough. But yeah, it's really like the whole value chain that you have to consider. Yeah.
And then I was also in the Pantanal. I saw 14 jaguars. The impact of seeing them hunting, trying to catch these caiman. I mean, I'm like most of us will forever be pro nature, and we need to keep this. And so I think we need to reconnect people to make sure that we are becoming more pro nature and pro rewilding, and then letting nature take the lead again. So we do have to make sure people get there, experience it, and feel nature again. And some of us are already convinced long time. So and then I would say you can start helping us. There are you could either volunteering or rewilding weeks. We have a lot of network members that are from their own profession helping. It's because it's a real movement, right? Because we're an organization or foundation, whatever we call it, of I think in total just over 150 people. But the movement is so much bigger.
I guess.
Hundreds of year-end members, so in the network, all businesses or park managers. We are having a youth group for young people. If you're not in your 30s yet, you can join the European Young Rewilders Network. They also have a lot of initiative, meetup, workshops, volunteer weeks, etc. But all these people have had this moment in their lives where they were in nature thinking, I don't want to be the one that is extracting from it and just looking at these penguins on the Antarctic, like, wow, it was so beautiful, and I see the last of it. And I'm one of the reasons why we're losing it. No, I want to be the person that's actually contributing to restoring it and making sure that nature is abundant again and everywhere.
So that means you can do like volunteering, maybe donation. You can work for your foundation, as you do yourself. And then there's also, I've started it myself actually. You have this free course, right? So if you're interested in the topic, there's a rewilding course that you can do for free online, and it's super interesting so far.
Yeah, I think it's just like 20 or 25 hours of course, right? The MOOC, our massive open online course. And we're actually building more and more specialized courses on different topics for different audiences. So we are also now building a MOOC for tourists. We're also building a MOOC for providers in tourism. We're also building a MOOC for local product creators, etc. So, but the MOOC that you're mentioning, it's definitely the start.
Yeah, only the start.
We're touching upon all topics related to rewilding in Europe.
Awesome. Good. And I want to shift the focus just briefly back to Europe, because our hiking audience from the podcast, they sometimes sort of look into like direction of America. There's these three massive trails that go through vast wilderness areas: Pacific Crest Trail, Continental Divide Trail, and Appalachian Trail. So these are the three big, the Triple Crown trails. And then we sometimes try to sort of mention, some wild places in Europe. And I think that you're probably the perfect person to talk about this. Maybe you could mention just a couple of like wild wilderness areas in Europe that people should maybe consider when they're looking at their next sort of hiking trip. You may have mentioned the Carpathians already. That's probably.
Well, I'm going to mention another one, because I have a lot of hiking experiences. But just go wilderplaces.com and set your filter to hiking, right? If you're a hiking enthusiast. The example I want to give is what we call the Iberian Highlands. It's a 1-hour train or car from Madrid. You can also come from Barcelona or Valencia, but it's in that triangle. It's a huge area. It's the least populated area in Europe, which I think is interesting, because Spain is not very...
wouldn't have thought,
No, but everyone is either going to Madrid or the coast. In between, all like villages are super abandoned. I mean, the city you can start with from Cuenca or maybe in the north, but it's there's still life, right? It's a city, small city, ancient one, very nice to look in the old town. But then there are hiking routes in that area, and we're actually building it in a way that we now are having old shepherd huts restored to stay over. They're off-grid. You can cook, but you have to cook your own meal.
Yeah.
But we can provide meals along the way, right? So that's a multi-day hike. There are different lengths that you can choose from.
Yeah.
It's not online yet. We're still in the process of building it. But that area is so amazing. I mean, you can now just pick the routes are there. You can pick accommodations. So the routes are maybe not done yet, but the routes are already there. And the area is one of the best examples of nature bouncing back if you just stop interfering with it and restore what is broken. In that area, some keystone species that are reintroduced are Przewalski horses, like one only truly wild horse. Also Tauros. We have this breed which sort of resembles like the very old, huge grazers that we had, the Auroch, but it's sort of similar.
The Aurochs thing. So
they don't exist anymore, right? But so the closest thing to it currently available is the Taurus. So those animals are also reintroduced. And if one of our guides, and we have a lot of preferred guides there, they can take you and you walk through this untouched landscape, mosaic. It's not that hot. You can even go there in summer because it's higher altitude. So we call the Iberian Highlands for a reason. amazing for hiking. And I would not go in the high season because then a lot of Spanish people also know it's not that hot. So that's the only moment, like in August, that's a little bit more people and less chances of encountering wildlife. But anywhere outside the peak season, definitely ideal for hikers. Yeah.
And you can see, if you're very, very lucky, probably the Iberian lynx. Is it also situated?
Yeah, but then
there?
you have to be very, very lucky.
Lottery winner. Yeah, lottery winner.
Yeah. Definitely on top of my bucket list to. But I mean, I'm already done with my bucket list. But if I want to see another animal in my life, then it would be the Iberian lynx. But it's like the most endangered cat species on the planet. Huh?
Correct. Even more than the Amur leopard.
I have to ask my colleagues from the Wild and
Probably same level. The Amur leopard is like I think like
I haven't checked it for if it's true, but when I was there, they told me this.
Yeah, could will be.
And there's but also there for bird lovers, there's a lot of vultures, also that we reintroduced as also an amazing animal to see, like 2.8 meters wide. It's not a small bird. It's big.
Fantastic. Thanks for the tip. And one more question to your about your project.
Bring your binoculars. Go hiking there.
Binocular, definitely. I have my binoculars. I love it. The projects you mentioned so far, they're more like land-based, but you mentioned before we had this interview that you will have some more like, what did you call seascapes or like coastal scapes projects?
Yeah, so we do have some coastal scapes already. For example, in Croatia, we have what we call the Velebit Mountains. So in order to restore nature and restore natural processes, you need a large area. We are very often connecting existing protected areas with corridors and making sure that people living in the corridors can coexist with the fact that the animals start commuting from one area to the other. Basically, all of the landscapes that we talked about, except for Sweden, are examples of that. Sweden is more about river restoration, but the Velebit, it's quite touristy area with a lot of people sailing boats, traffic jams along the coast, right? 500 meters inwards, hardly anyone there. You can see wolves, you can see bears, you can see we have a different type of horse breed there, but you can actually do a photo safari with a 4x4 on the Lika Plains, which almost feels like you're in Botswana and Okavango Delta. So it's also making people realize that the system drives you to these resorts on the coast. Look a little bit further, and I think the people listening to your podcast definitely will resonate and already doing it. But those are also coastal. So there are also a few islands. The thing that was happening in that landscape in the Velebit Mountains was that people were hunting a lot, big hunting culture.
Yeah.
And what we have been doing very successfully is just buying the hunting concessions one by one. Every time there comes one available, we buy it. So we have another concession for another 5 or 10 years, but we don't hunt.
Yeah.
A little bit of hunting with the existing hunt, because we also need them to onboard, right? Everybody has to become has to coexist. Also the hunters, and they sometimes do have a role, right? So we're trying to still be friends with them, but we are the owners of the concession, so we are in control. And we have a few islands in front of the coast as well, and also the sea in between it. So we do, and we are now just opening another shore seascape in Ireland, but that's I'm not sure if it's official already.
Okay.
We're now 11 landscapes, and as I said in the beginning, we are picking those landscapes on purpose. We are our founder, Frans, who is amazing in building this organization and has an amazing vision. We're picking these landscapes because they're so different. We are now 11. We are envisioning we need about 15 to have all types of landscapes available, and the last ones are definitely also seascapes. So where we were talking about like kelp restoration or breeding areas for fish. Super interesting, and there are now currently 2 that are almost like on the brink of being approved. Both of them are areas at sea.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we're really looking forward to onboard those as well and learn how rewilding and letting nature take the lead again in the ocean or the Mediterranean Sea
Yeah.
works, right? What we can learn from it and how we can share that with the rest of the world and collaborate with all of us to make Europe a wilder place, which is our
Really,
mission.
really awesome news. Can't wait for these projects. And I've one last fun question for you. So like
Cool.
you probably, I know that you have some hiking or have done some hiking already, but do you have like one favorite hike that you've done or hiking area that you always return to? Either the Swiss Alps or what is sort of your
Definitely,
favorite hike so far?
I partly grew up here, so I would definitely say the Haute Route off season. So walking, especially in winter, tour skiing from, I would always do them the other way around that most people do, from Zermatt to Chamonix. Oh, so amazing. All these 4,000-meter peaks. I climbed a few of them, but I think that's also, I mean, the Alps, as humans, we don't have a lot to interfere here, right?
Yeah.
It's wild nature. I mean, there's always a lot of talk about, does wilderness still exist in Europe? Some people say it's only 3% of our continent is truly wilderness, but in the Alps, I feel so at home. I feel so, it's my happy place, definitely. And then especially off season when the cabins are still open. I also do like to set up a tent, which is allowed in the Alps above 2,000 meters.
Yep.
But just go from cabin to cabin in winter. That's the Haute Route is amazing. Take the Italian side now and then to have good food and good coffee, and not all have to eat cheese every night.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because we did actually walk the route, my friend and I, but in summer we did the walkers odd route and we hiked it in summer and we loved it so much. We saw some ibex, we saw some eagles. It was
many ibex,
so good. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
Also one of my favorite animals, the ibex.
Yeah.
But I also like chamois. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And we also hiked in Ireland as well. That's why I'm also excited about your seascape, your unofficial sea landscape there, because they have a beautiful coastline. They have an amazing variety of animals in the ocean. They have the basking shark. They have some dolphins. They even have some sea eagles returning. So pretty amazing, pretty wild place in Ireland.
We're really looking forward to onboard that, and there's already our organizations operating. But it's very cool to bring them together. They really embrace this vision of rewilding, where we stop interfering, we fix what we broke, and then let nature take the lead again. That's we would love to help them and learn together and grow this movement. And as I said, make Europe a wilder place again.
Yeah, these are some very good sentences. I need to write them down somewhere to make nature take the lead again and make Europe a wilder place. Sounds super amazing. And
really, as a human, realize that our brain is made to make us feel as if we understand things, but it's highly overestimating how good it is at it. We don't get the complexity. I think the example that you gave of the seal and the kelp as a breeding place for fish is a nice example.
Yeah, that's even a big mammal. Sometimes it's just like you remove like a spider or like another insect, and the whole thing gets unstable and collapses, so it's super complex.
Very often our response or our reflex is, but then we need to fix that, but then we have to do that. But usually what we can do best is stop interfering.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think a good example is always Chernobyl, how nature recovered in Chernobyl. It's been untouched. You have moose, wolves, deer, everything, so it's just claimed it back.
And I think also Chernobyl makes people realize how quickly that happens.
Yeah,
like nature bounces back so quickly. The difference if we're operating in a landscape for a few years, I mean, just if you have a garden and you stop mowing it, it'll be totally different in a year, 2 years, and maybe it's not what you want from a garden. I totally get that. I also mow my garden, but this is the power of nature. This is how quickly it can bounce back if we stop interfering.
Wonderful. Well, Bart, all I have to say is thank you so much for the interview. Thank you so much for your time. It's been truly inspiring. I hope we could also inspire some people who are listening and watching us. And I wish you a wonderful week and some more wonderful experiences in nature.
Across our landscapes. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. Book at wilderplaces.com.
Yes. I'll do. I'll see you in the field.
Yes, yeah,
All right.
perfect. Yeah, love
Bye
it.
bye.
Bye bye.